Yeah. Hi. Hey. Welcome, everyone. So this is the state of Drupal 9. I am Gábor Hojtsy. You can find me at Gábor Hojtsy on Twitter. It's the primary platform for a lot of Drupalers that you can find them. And these slides are open source. I will share the link at the end of this slideshow, but I created these slides with the intent for anyone to present these slides anywhere in the world. Some people already translated the slides to other languages. Some people already presented these slides elsewhere. It's great. I never presented these slides, but they are already improved even before I presented them, because there's already been people in Munich and elsewhere who presented them. So, I mean, they improved it for me. It's great. So, open source all the way. I am Gábor Hojtsy. I work with Drupal since 2003. So it's 16 years now. I work at Acquia since 2007, so about 12 years. I used to be the release manager / responsible person for Drupal 6. And I also used to be the leader for the Drupal 8 multilingual initiative. So I worked with, across all the team, about 4,000 people to improve the multilingual experience in Drupal from 7 to 8. And I think we made it much better. I don't know, what do you think? It's good? Okay, great. Yay! Audience says much better. Yay. So, this talk is about Drupal 9, though, because I'm now focused on coordinating the work towards Drupal 9. And first, to understand what Drupal 9 is, we need to talk about how Drupal innovates. Because Drupal 9 is not how Drupal innovates. It's kind of an interesting point, because it used to be that when we came out with a big new release, it had all the new shiny bells and whistles, and it was great, it has a lot of new features. That's not the case with Drupal 9. So the way we innovate in Drupal is within our current version Drupal 8 currently. So there's 3 concepts that we've introduced with Drupal 8 that help us with creating innovation as we go, without releasing a new major version. So the first one is semantic versioning that we introduced with Drupal 8. And what this means is, even without releasing Drupal 9, we can release new features in minor versions, 8.1, 8.2, etc. And we can deliver new features in those versions without breaking backwards compatibility. We made a few mistakes where we broke backwards compatibility, but that was not the intention. So the intention is we release new features without breaking backwards compatibility. And we are improving doing this with every release, basically. So that allows us to keep innovating. And then the next thing that we introduced with Drupal 8 is scheduled releases. So what we do is we have 2 releases for minor release every year. And we release the new features twice a year, basically. So this allows us to push out new stuff to users twice a year. It also helps us get feedback much more often. So when we build out a new feature, it's in users' hands in 6 months latest. And then we get feedback from people, and we can improve it much faster than before. So Drupal 8 was built for several years. And once people could start use it, the features that we built 3 years before would only get feedback 3 years later. That was kind of a problem. So now when we work on new features, we get feedback much faster as core developers. And it's also much better for contributors, because when they contribute something, it's released in 6 months. It's not released in 2 years or 4 years or when it's ready, but it's released in 6 months. So it's an incentive to contribute to Drupal core, because whatever you work on is going to be in users' hands much faster. It's better for us as core developers because we get feedback faster from users. And it's better for users because they get features faster and Drupal can innovate faster. So it's like a win, 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 win. One more thing that we introduced for things that cannot be done in 6 months, that are too big projects to finish in 6 months, is experimental modules. So these are modules in core that we release as part of the stable release of Drupal core, but we mark these parts of Drupal core as not yet ready for stable. So we call those experimental, and we release them as beta versions, at least now. So they need to also provide backwards compatibility, but they may make changes before they get stable. They may have missing features that are critical for stability, like accessibility or certain feature integrations or that kind of stuff. So with the combination of semantic versioning, allowing us to make feature releases, and scheduled releases, which made it faster to push feature releases out, and experimental modules, which allowed us to release things that are not yet ready, but we would like to have feedback, we made a lot of great changes to push out great new stuff to people. So here are some examples from 8.6. We released a new experimental media library module that was kind of overdue for a long time to allow you to reuse media and have a visual browser for media on your site. We also released workspaces that allows you to stage packages of things all at once and then push them through a review process and get them quality assured. And we made stable the umami demo in core. That's a demonstration of a food magazine that allows you to try out Drupal without first needing to create all kinds of content and understand the whole system. And we made monolingual migration stable in 8.6. So that was a minor release of Drupal 8, but it came with a lot of great new stuff. So when we say it's a minor release, it's kind of misleading because it's very exciting. But minor is the terminology in semantic versioning. And then with 8.7, that was released earlier this month. We hugely improved the existing media library. So it's much more visual. It now has integrated OEmbed submission support. It has grid view and table view swapping. It's much more accessible, had a lot of accessibility improvements and a bunch of other features built. We've also made stable the layout builder. That's been an experimental module for a while. And it's very exciting. A lot of people are hugely excited by layout builder in core, because that revolutionizes how you build layouts for a page and for parts of a page. And we also added the brand new layout, the brand new JSON API as a stable module. That's not been a core module before. And that strengthens our commitment to API first. And then, also in 8.7, we included optional support for Twig 2. So 8.7 is entirely compatible with Twig 2, so you can optionally update your sites to use Twig 2 if you can patch your composer file and keep that patch up to date. So we've been working on these improvements in 8.7, and we will surely work on a bunch of improvements for 8.8. We're working on some layout builder improvements. We hope to get more stable with workspaces. We hope to get stable with media, etc. So there's a bunch of things we're working on, and theoretically, we could keep going forever, right? These are cool new features. They are backwards compatible. What's not to like about that? Like, we could go on forever and ever and release versions however long we want, because this process is great. I told you everything about it is great. There's new features, great feedback, incentives for our contributors. We can release all of these great things. Why not continue forever? So some people said, OK, let's continue forever. And unfortunately, we cannot continue on Drupal 8 forever. So why do we need Drupal 9? So Drupal 9 is not going to be coming with exciting new features. Drupal 9 is a cleanup release. So there's two reasons for Drupal 9. One is to clean up our own stuff. So as we keep adding more and more new things, there are solutions that are just outdated in core now that are not valid anymore, that we want to remove. They're not relevant. So we want to clean up our own code base. And Drupal 8 and 9, consequently, also relies on a lot of third-party dependencies. Some of them will go out of support. They will not get security support anymore. Their bugs may not be fixed. And so we need to update their versions. And if we update their versions, that will affect our API as well in turn, etc. So we need to take care of updating third-party dependencies. So Drupal 9 will be a cleanup release, cleaning out Drupal 8 and continuing on the process that we've going so far. So what are some of these dependencies? For example, Drupal 8 depends on Symfony 3 and jQuery some version 3.2, CK Editor 4, and Twig 1. And all of these have support cycles that may end soon. So Symfony 3, for example, will end 2021 November, and Ckeditor 4 will end 2023. And Twig 1 is not yet defined, but we think the maintainers will define when they end support for that soon. And jQuery is not that well maintained anymore, so there's going to be things around these that we need to take care of. And we need to update these dependencies and release a new major version if they break the APIs and if it's not the same API anymore. And we need to do that as a responsible people, because if they need to release security fixes for their new versions and it's not backported to the old version anymore, then Drupal 8 users will be screwed. And we don't want to do that. So our biggest dependency and the soonest end of support is Symfony. So Symfony 3 is going to be end of support 2021 November. So consequently, we need to end of life Drupal 8 at November 2021. We could theoretically fork Symfony 3 and maintain our own Symfony 3, but we don't want to do that. It's painful. That's why we work with other communities, because we can contribute back our fixes and they help us do our stuff, and we don't want to maintain the version for them. It's not fun. So we're going to end Drupal 8 security and bug fix support November 2021. What does that mean? Is that Drupal 8 end of life will be on the same date. So what does that mean is that we want to release the new version soon before that, so you have time to update to the new version, because you need some time to update to the new version. So we first thought that you need at least 1 year to update, and then we realized it's probably better to plan for a year and a half. And if we can't do that, if we can't make summer of 2020 happen, then it's still not that bad that we need to slip to winter of 2020 with Drupal 9 release. So we decided on summer of 2020 as a target, and we try to do everything we can to make that happen. If it doesn't happen, then it will move over to Q4 2020. But our target is summer 2020. So that's going to be the first release of Drupal 9. And then that's where Drupal 9 security and bug fix support starts, and then we'll continue releasing Drupal 9 releases on from there. So, putting this back together from the previous screen, what happens is after 8.80, we plan to release 8.9.0, and on the same day, we release 9.0.0. These two versions are released on the same day, exact same day. And then we continue with 9.1, etc. So Drupal 8 will not continue getting more features anymore, no more minor releases, and Drupal 9 will continue getting more exciting features. So this is where the exciting new shiny things will happen, 9.1. 9.0 is the cleanup release that should be easy to update from 8.9. It's not the shiny new feature release. So how do we make that happen? How do we make Drupal 9 happen? So how does Drupal 8.9 becomes 9.0 on the same day? It's a lot of fun. So previously, when we built a new major version of Drupal core, this is how it looked like. We had Drupal 7, and then at one point we said, let's start working on Drupal 9, and we started a branch of Drupal 7, and we started working on Drupal 8, sorry. So we started a branch of Drupal 7, and we started working on Drupal 8, and it diverged from Drupal 7, and we went off to a corner, and we went crazy. We refactored everything, and it was great. For developers, they could rewrite all the APIs they want. For everybody else, for contributed module developers, for actual users of Drupal, it was bad, because we went off to the other mountain somewhere else on the road, and it was hard to move over there for contributed module developers and for actual users. So there was a lot of pain. It was great for developers, but because they could have fun and they could rewrite everything, but it was bad for everybody else. And it was even bad for developers, as I explained, because if you build something, if you refactored an API, it may be released 3 years later. So you worked on something, it's the great new technology, and in 3 years it may be already old technology. Or you only get validation of your work 3 years later. So it was even bad for core developers, not just bad for contrib developers and for users. Even though core developers, not everybody realized it was bad for them. So what we decided to do with 8 to 9 instead is we continue on the path of 8 to 9, we stop 8. We can't support 8 because of the third-party dependencies. and we continue on working on 9. So, but we need to work on 8. We need to work on 9 somewhere. So the trick is we are working on 9 in 8. So we are making 9 happen in 8. So the fourth component of the innovation model of Drupal is deprecation processes. So what we do is when we add a new shiny thing in Drupal core, we also mark the old thing as deprecated. We say, this is going to be removed in the future. Please don't use it anymore. We don't want you to use this. We keep the old thing there. So you can still use it if you want to, but we say, please don't use it anymore if you can. But we also add the new shiny thing, and we say, by the way, this is the new shiny thing that you should use instead. So what we do here is we basically mark future changes in Drupal core. So we say this is going to be a future change. Please be prepared. And we release it in Drupal 8 to you. So we release all the new things, and we also release all the markings for future change in Drupal 8. So people can prepare gradually for Drupal 9. So if they follow these future changes in Drupal 8, they are prepared for Drupal 9. So how do we do that on an abstract level? So this is how it looks like. So you have the Drupal 8.7 API, let's say. It consists of these boxes. And we add some new, one of them is a new solution that we've added. That's a great new thing. And then one of them is the old solution for the same thing. I will have a code example soon, so you understand actual code as well if you're looking for that. So we mark the old solution deprecated. And then we've, of course, also have these third-party dependencies lying here that we'll need to take care of soon, but not yet. So what happens next is we keep continuing this, and we end up with, let's say, 8.9. It has a bunch of new things. It has a bunch of things that we say this will be removed. Don't use this. We're going to remove this. And we still have the old dependencies, or the continued keep the dependencies around. So we keep supporting everything that we have. We also have the new things, and we have the old dependency. And what we do in Drupal 9 is we remove the gray things, and we update the dependencies, and that's Drupal 9. So basically, you get 8.9 is the same as Drupal 9 if you are not using deprecated code, and if you're not using anything from the old dependencies, or you're only using things that are compatible with the new dependencies. And the way we do this for our own APIs is the new solutions and deprecations. The way we do this for dependencies is we add optional support for new versions. So 8.7 comes with optional support for Twig 2. You can already use Twig 2 with 8.7. So if you start using Twig 2, you're already partly using Drupal 9. You're like somewhere over Drupal 9. And we also almost completed optional support for Symfony 4 in 8.7. We only have one issue remaining for Symfony 4 support. So 8.8 will hopefully support Symfony 4, optionally. It will not require Symfony 4 because we keep Symfony 3 around as our required dependency, but it will optionally support Symfony 4. So we gradually make Drupal 8 to be Drupal 9. The great thing about this is if you keep updating your Drupal core version, you are kind of naturally transitioning into Drupal 9. Like you can't avoid becoming Drupal 9 because we're gradually transitioning you to Drupal 9. So in short, the Drupal 9.0 API will be the Drupal 8.9 API minus the deprecated parts plus the third-party dependencies updated. So in other words, Drupal 8 modules not using deprecated APIs will continue to work on Drupal 9. So we are doing this in Drupal 8 because this allows us to push out these changes to users much faster. We can get validation even on our optional support for Twig 2 and Symfony 4 before Drupal 9 is even released. We can get validation on all the new features. And people using Drupal can prepare for Drupal 9 gradually as we go. They can follow these deprecations. They can follow these optional dependency updates. And they can prepare for the new version as we go. And there's no big bang new version surprise. All of these APIs changed because we tell you every single release, this is how Drupal 9 is going to look like. This is how Drupal 9 is going to look like. And we refine how Drupal 9 is going to look like gradually instead of one big bang release. So how can you prepare for Drupal 9 then? How can you follow this process? So here's an example deprecation that we do. So for example, in Drupal 8, normally there's file unmanaged copy, which copies a file from a place to another. And in Drupal 8.7, we deprecated file unmanaged copy, and we introduced the file system service that has a copy method that takes a source and the destination. So the improvement here, there's a lot of improvements here. It doesn't look, maybe not doesn't look like an improvement from this example, but the reason this is an improvement is being a service, it has an interface that has methods for what kind of file operations it has. You don't need to poke around in the file underscore functions and find the right one. It has an interface that defines all the file functions that belong together. It's a service, so you can mock it in your tests. You don't need to have the full service running around. It's a service, it's a class that it's auto-loaded when it's needed. It's not always loaded in memory. It's a service that you can instrument. It's a service that you can replace with a different implementation. If you don't like the core file implementation, you want to have this distributed magic file system that does crazy things and tracking of file locations, whatever. You can replace the file system service and do whatever you want, unlike global functions. And just generally, it's the style of how Drupal 8 writes code. So if you otherwise write Drupal 8 code, this is much more familiar to you, how you write Drupal 8 code. So it's more consistent, it's testable, it's easier to test, it's easier to instrument, it's easier to swap out, replace, all kinds of other things. It has an interface. So there's a lot of benefits. What we do, though, is we introduce the new solution and we say this is better, and we keep the old solution around. And what we do there is this is the old solution now, file unmanaged copy, and we do two things. When you invoke this function, then we trigger an error. We say, you call this function, it's now deprecated in 8.7.0, and will be removed in Drupal 9, and use this instead. And see this documentation page for more information. And then we put in an @deprecated annotation on the function that says also the same thing. So the @deprecated annotation does a bunch of things. If you use PHP Storm or another advanced IDE, that will cross over your function name when you try to use it. So it already tells you that you're using a deprecated thing. There's also a bunch of tools that I will talk about shortly that analyzes the code based on that annotation. And the trigger error is silenced by default. So if you use this function, it's not going to fill in your logs with errors. But if you use a testing system that actually logs these errors, then it's going to tell you when you're using deprecated things. So one of the tools that's been built by Centauro person, Matt Gleiman, is this Drupal check tool. And this is the full use of Drupal check. I curl, download the Drupal check var, and then I run the Drupal check var with PHP on the core path module. And then it tells me which deprecated things is the Drupal core path module uses, because core is still using deprecated things, unfortunately. We are working on that. So this is the kind of report you get, is that the core migrate URL alias test is using the deprecated lookup destination ID method of this class. So you get a report of all the things that are future removals that will be removed in Drupal 9. And now you can already fix them because they have documentation on what to do instead. So you go read the documentation for them, and then you can fix them and replace them with the new way to do these things, and then you are ready for Drupal 9 with this code. And that's the way we built Drupal 9. So you can follow along with these deprecations. We continue to release these deprecations, then you continue to follow them with Drupal check, then it's going to be fine with you. And then we built another tool, which we'll hopefully launch here, is a UI on top of the same thing. So it lists all the modules that you have on the site, and then you can say you want to scan all your modules, and then it scans your modules, and it color codes them based on errors, and then even while it scans the modules, you can go in and view the results, and it lists you the same thing in the HTML table. It also links to the documentation, so you can go to the documentation, Drupal set message, and that tells you that this is what to use instead. That's your deprecation. You can go back, and then when the full scan is ready, you have available update information for contrib modules. You can keep them updated so they improve the deprecation adherence of them, or you can export a full report and then send to a developer to deal with all that stuff. So this is a tool we built for having an overview of what's going on in your site. is much better than Drupal check for having an executive overview on the site. But you still need to get involved with the contributed modules maintainers to fix those issues. What the contributed module maintainers can do is this. So Drupal.org has support for deprecation testing of contributed modules. So if you run a contributed module, or if you want to contribute to a contributed module and have deprecation testing there, there's two things that a contributed module can do. One is tests, normal tests, simple test PHP unit, blah, blah. They can say, I don't want to suppress the deprecation failures. So whenever a trigger error is invoked, I want to fail. So this is going to fail your tests if any of the code that is covered by your tests is using deprecated code. So if any code is encountered in the test that is using deprecated code, then this will fail your tests. And there's also static analysis, which is basically the same thing as Drupal check. So that's the PHP stanky that you can add to your Drupal CI.yaml and your Drupal.org contributed project, and that will run the same Drupal check command on Drupal.org and will print a report as part of your test results. So Drupal.org maintainers can use these two tools to prepare for Drupal 9. And obviously, the results of them will depend on what you have in your code base. So the more test coverage you have, the more reliability of failing on deprecated code use will have for you. And then, on top of this, there's a tool, there's a proof of concept tool that Dezső Bicó has been working on in Hungary. The project is called Drupal 8 Rector. And it not just finds your deprecated things, it suggests you a patch to fix your deprecated thing. So, well, here it finds Drupal set message, which is deprecated, and then it suggests you this patch to, instead of Drupal set message something, something, something warning, you should use the messenger service add warning method and then put up this something, something, something. So this suggests you patches against your code to be forward compatible with future versions like Drupal 9. All right, so there's some pressing questions. Should you remove all deprecated code immediately? Should you be like working on all of this, like go back home and do it now? Is that the answer? If it's custom code, then you are totally fine to remove deprecated code based on your minor version of Drupal core. So if you're using Drupal's 8.7, you can remove all the deprecated code that already has replacements in 8.7 in your custom code. For contributed projects on Drupal.org, they will probably not do that because Drupal core versions are supported for 12 months, for a year. So if they immediately remove deprecated code, that also means that if they start using the new code that's been released only in the new version, that it will not be compatible with previous Drupal core versions anymore. And if they do that, then they force you to update your core versions to a later version. So maintainers aware and maintainers who are aware of this fact will not follow deprecations immediately. They will follow deprecations 6 months out or a year out based on when the replacement was made available for the deprecation. So when you work with maintainers on Drupal.org to make their code better and more Drupal 9 compatible, then keep this in mind that they want to focus on supporting as many Drupal users as possible. The other question is, when do we know all the deprecated things? So we keep adding deprecated things, we keep adding deprecated things, you keep following the deprecations when it's over. When is it going to be over? Obviously, we will not be able to deprecate anything after 8.9 because there's not going to be any more 8 releases. But we decided to stop deprecating for 9 in 8.8 instead, because that allows you half a year window to now you know all the deprecations. So you can look at your custom code and you can remove all the deprecated stuff from there, and then you will be ready for Drupal 9 on the day of the Drupal 9 release. Then the final question is, will contributed modules be updated when it will be complete? Because that's always been a pain in Drupal, the uptake of the new version with contributed modules. So at MidCamp 2019 in March, Dwayne McDaniel from Pantheon ran a script. They ran a script first on the top 300 contributed modules and then submitted issues against them with the Drupal check reports. All top 300 contributed modules. And then they started involving sprinters to fix the issues in the contributed modules. And then Dwayne ran a report on all the contributed modules for Drupal 8, 8,000 contributed modules, or 7,000 plus, sorry. And then came to this result. So this is based on Dwayne's data from March, is that almost half of the Drupal 8 modules use no deprecated code. So as much as we know right now about the deprecated code, half of the Drupal 8 modules are already Drupal 9 compatible, as much as we know, based on the, I believe, Drupal 8.7 code base that they used. And then about a third of the modules have 1 to 5 deprecation errors. That's a small number. That's, I mean, based on the patches you've seen for Drupal set message, this is the kind of patches that most of the deprecations need to apply as a one-line change. So they will be very easy to fix, and there's 17% who have 6 or more. There are some outliers with a lot of failures, but there's only a few that have a lot of failures. So we are in a pretty good shape. So as we continue going forward, we will introduce new deprecations that will make these numbers worse. And also as we go forward, contributed module maintainers will keep following the deprecations, which will make the numbers better. So I don't know what the trend is going to look like, but this is how it looked like 2 months ago. So it's pretty encouraging. So what Dries wrote, I really like this line from a blog post from Dries, is the big deal about Drupal 9 is that it should not be a big deal. Because it's not a big major update, it's just a continuation of the Drupal 8 API with some cleanups. Half of the Drupal 8 modules are already Drupal 9 ready. So we can move over to Drupal 9 in a smooth fashion. So when people ask me what's the great new feature in Drupal 9, I tell them that the great new feature of Drupal 9 is an easy upgrade path. And you've always wanted to have an easy upgrade path. You've always asked about all the crazy new API first, or admin UI, or React, or whatever, or chatbots. But that's not going to happen in Drupal 9.0. What's going to happen with Drupal 9.0 is this process, and the easiest we can do it, the better. So we are focusing on making an easy upgrade path the great new feature of Drupal 9.0, so that the more people can adapt. What if you are on Drupal 7? All right, so usually this has been the case. So we released a new major version, Drupal 9. Then we dropped support for Drupal 7 because there was 2 releases earlier. So this is what would usually, historically, happen. So at this time, there's a lot of sites on Drupal 7, a lot more sites than this used to happen. So what we decided to do is to expand the support scope until November 2021, so it's the same time frame as Drupal 8 support. And then the same program that happened for Drupal 6 is going to be there for Drupal 7, commercial security support, and that runs until at least 2024. And that means that there's going to be vendors you can contract with to provide security support for Drupal 7 sites. So there's going to be the same regular community support for Drupal 7 until November 2021, so also gives you more time to update to Drupal 8 and consequently 9. And then if you still need Drupal 7 support, it's still going to be available for 5 more years from now. So that's Drupal 7. If you are on Drupal 7, there's 3 categories of tools that you can start looking at to migrate. So for all the contributed modules that you have on your site, the upgrade status module, the Drupal 7 version, can be used to estimate the availability of different contributed modules and which ones need to be moved to other modules and which are available and how much. If for your custom code, you can use the Drupal module upgrader, which gives you also patches, basically automated code update suggestions for your Drupal 7 code based on how you should update to Drupal 8. And then for all of your content, the migration module in core is what you should use, and there's a bunch of extensions in Contrib to make it easier and to round it out with additional features. And once again, if you are moving to Drupal 8 from Drupal 7, which you should do, then you are almost on Drupal 9, because half of the modules are already Drupal 9 compatible, and we are working on making it as easy as possible. So unlike the move from Drupal 7 to 8, which is going to be painful for you, the Drupal 8 to 9 move will not be painful. To make it even less painful, as part of your migration process, when you're building out your new Drupal 8 site, as you're moving up from Drupal 7, you can use Drupal check in your CI system, in your continuous integration system, in your development environments, to check the custom code that you're writing, that it's still going to be Drupal 9 compatible. So as you're moving to Drupal 8 from Drupal 7, you can do already a Drupal 9 compatible site. So let's recap the key points. Drupal core innovates twice a year and will continue to do so. We release new features on a twice-yearly cadence, and we will continue to do so in Drupal 9. Drupal 9 is built in Drupal 8 step by step, so you get to use parts of Drupal 9 already on your Drupal 8 sites, and it will naturally evolve into Drupal 9. If you keep up with the Drupal 8 releases, then you are prepared for an easy Drupal 9 upgrade. Keep up meaning you update your contributed modules, your core version, and you look at your deprecated use in your contributed modules. For Drupal 7 users, there's no reason to wait for Drupal 9 because it's not a whole new thing that you need to move to. It's a continuation of 8. So you can already move to 8 and start building that out, and then have a safer time until the end of Drupal 7's community support at the end of November 2021. If you don't want to contract with a vendor, but if you want to contract with a vendor, they will offer extended Drupal 7 support going forward until at least 2024. So as I said, the slides are open source. You can find them at bit.ly/stateofDrupal9. This is an editable version of the slides, and so you can make a copy of this, translate it to whatever you want, or make changes and present it at your company, at your meetup, bring it to far and wide everywhere, basically, in the world, please. There's an extensive set of documentation pages at drupal.org/docs/9, and that has all the details about the things that I talked to you with, a lot of links to all the tools that I've shown and explanations and screenshots. So thank you for listening. I'm Gábor Hojtsy on social media, and I will take questions for 5 minutes now.
So is it correct that 8.9 and 9.0 have exactly the same code, except of the deprecated code removed from 9.0?
Yeah, so the question was, is 8.9 and 9.0 exactly the same code except deprecations and third-party dependency updates? Yes. We have not encountered anything that we would need to do otherwise. So we are 1 year out of that release date. We may encounter something, but it's a very small chance that we would encounter something that will not fit into that model. So far, we could fit everything into the model of it's going to be only the things that are deprecated and we need to remove, and only the things that are dependencies and we need to update. We will not update every dependency just because. So for each dependency update, we look at the pain and the benefit ratio. Like, is it worth updating this to this new version? Is it too different of an API? Does it provide us with benefits of more security support, better features, etc.?
Just a quick question. In which version we will see a new Drupal 8, Drupal 9 logo?
So the question was, in which version will we see a new Drupal 9 logo, if I understood that right. So there's a Drupal 8 logo. I believe, due to the process that we are now releasing new Drupal versions, and that Drupal 9 is just an extension of Drupal 8, I believe that there's no intention to create a Drupal 9 logo. There is the intention to refresh the Drupal icon, the Drupal icon, to be more modern. That's gonna hopefully happen later this summer. I don't know, I don't have more details about that, but that's what I've heard.
More questions? One more question from me. May I tell to my customers I use Drupal 9 while building sites on Drupal 8?
Can you tell your customers that you are already on Drupal 9?
Yeah.
You can. So I've heard some people already said that there's job positions advertised with Drupal 9 experience. And you know, since it's I mean, we are building Drupal 9 and 8, and we have all these tools, or I think Drupal 9 experience at this point means that you understood this presentation, and you are aware of these tools, and you have used them in some context. So if you come to the contribution day on tomorrow, then Angie is going to lead a Drupal 9 deprecation sprint tomorrow at the contribution day, and they will use these tools to check code for deprecations and fix them. So once you are there at the contribution day, then you can write down you have Drupal 9 experience. Done. Thank you.